Hi, everyone. My name is Bethany Vibert, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. During the coronavirus crisis, our telehealth resources include diagnosis and treatment of mental health and learning disorders, 30-minute phone consultations, bereavement and grief support, remote neuropsychological evaluations, and that's really just a sampling. So please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more. Today, I'd like to talk about anxiety in a time of protest and tension and answer your questions about that and anything else you're wondering about. Go ahead and post your questions in the feed, and we'll also post some links to helpful resources on childmind.org. Remember, we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. I'm especially honored to be with you here to talk about this topic of anxiety in a time of protest and tension, because it is really a lot of what's happening right now. We've certainly all been hunkered down dealing with the coronavirus, and now we have a lot of other things going on that are really being brought to light and brought to our attention. And we've gotten a lot of questions from parents and caregivers, just like you, about how to handle this with their children. In addition to previous videos and things that we've done, we also got some additional questions from parents. So I have a few here that I'm going to start out with, but feel free to post your comments and things that you're curious about in the feed below, and I'll certainly try to address them. Again, if we can't address them, we'll certainly get to them at another time. So first, I want to start off with a question that we've seen from a few parents so far. This parent writes, "My daughter has been desperate to attend the protests, but I'm worried she could get hurt or get sick or even get us sick. Am I being too careful?" This is a great question. This is a time especially where our children and us are wanting to do things. A lot of people are really seeing what's going on in the world and what's been going on for a while in this world and wanting to do something about it. Deciding whether or not to attend a protest is really up to you and your family. There's several things that I think you can consider when making that decision with your children. One of those things to consider is their level of maturity, their understanding of what's going on, their desire to participate, and things like safety are also quite important. So I encourage you, when your child does say they want to attend a protest, whether or not you've truly decided on your answer, if you're going to allow them to go or go with them or attend a protest, I think it's a really nice way of actually getting a conversation started about what's going on. This is a conversation that really shouldn't be shied away from. It's something that Black families in America have to have no matter what, and that white families too should be absolutely paying attention with and having these conversations with their children. So if they're talking about wanting to go to a protest or attend a protest, that's a really great way to just kind of keep them talking about a topic, especially the topic of racism and police brutality and what's going on in this world today, and our history, what's been going on for many years. It's a great way to engage them and ask them questions, learn their perspectives, learn what they know about the topic. For example, why do you want to go? Or tell me about what you hope going will do. Or how do you feel about going? Maybe they bring up things that they might be scared about attending a protest. It's a really nice way to engage the conversation. So first, I think it's great that you're even thinking about these things. Definitely use this as an opportunity to engage them in the conversation. The next thing that we want to think about is safety. Obviously, there are a small minority of people that are, looting or causing some disruption at these protests. And it's important to know the safety of your child. So regardless of those behaviors of others, one thing you want to make sure of is that if you do go and you need to move from a situation quickly or give them a quick instruction or do something, make sure they stay next to you, for example, if they're in a crowd, you just want to make sure that they understand like basic safety, being in crowds in public in general, whether it be a protest or not. This has a lot to do with the maturity of your child, the rules your family has in place, and things like that. That's going to happen whether you're deciding to go to a protest or a state fair, for example. There's always a risk when you're bringing your child into a big crowd, and you want to be sure that they're ready to handle that risk, or that you're ready to handle that risk, really, and that you've had conversations with them about what to do in advance. Again, regardless of the context, it's important. However, with this context, it's obviously particularly important to come up with a plan with them to make sure that they have your phone number on them, for example, written down on a piece of paper should they need it for anything. when you do steps like that, what you want to make sure of is your child understands then what to do with that phone number if something were to happen or they lose their cell phone or anything like that. So that's where I think a big part of safety really does come in, is being able to trust that your child can really physically handle situations like that. The other thing I think that is important to understand when they talk about wanting to go to a protest, if there is something that does make you uncomfortable as a parent about attending, or you're nervous about certain things, that's completely your decision and you're right. But it also can really generate another good conversation about the other things that you can do to continue supporting the cause, lending support to Black families and Black people in this country, as well as teaching them about history, writing, congressmen, for example, or their mayor. It's important to show them other steps that can also be taken. Right now, there are a lot of protests going on, and it's unfortunate that this has happened many times in our country, especially with protests and things like that. Protests have done a nice job of drawing attention to things, but there are also other actions people can take. And I think if your child is really trying to engage civically and engage in democracy and using their voice, using this as an opportunity to support that is really nice. It's a really nice idea that they do want to contribute and give back. And it's a nice opportunity that if you're still thinking about that decision, whether to go or not, whether they can be safe at something like that or not, it's really important that you also then give them other ways, other means of protesting, maybe not in a crowd. So maybe it's by posting things and sharing things on social media and discussing those things with you and their friends and other people in your social circle that they have the opportunity to discuss those things with. It's also, like I said, a really great opportunity to talk to them about using their voice and how to use their voice, what exactly going to a protest means, and what going to a protest in this country means. I mean, we are able to do that in this country because we do have a freedom of speech, and using this as an opportunity to teach them holistically about those things, especially in the context of racism, and talking about how they can use their voice in this context is really important. Just because they go to a protest or just because you attend a rally with them, doesn't necessarily mean that the conversation ends there and that the work ends there, especially for you and your family. And so whether or not you decide ultimately to attend a protest or a rally with your child, I think looking at the broader context about the other things you can also do to support this cause, to continue having conversations, direct conversations about racism in this country, in your home, maybe in their school, in their community. There really are so many levels and layers to this issue. And I think that discussing social justice, discussing inequality, discussing the history of inequality, all of these things are important conversations to have today, tomorrow, and to continue having. And so I think that as you think about whether to attend that protest or not, thinking about other ways they can protest, maybe by not attending that protest and maybe by doing other things. And so I encourage you to really, like I said, use that as a jumping off point. Lastly, I will say, in terms of getting hurt or getting sick, I think that there are definitely a lot of guidelines about how to attend these protests. Wear a mask and make sure, again, that your child is comfortable wearing a mask. So that's kind of the foundation, that if we go to the protest, you have to wear a mask the whole time, and kind of going through those things before you attend the protest to make sure that they can act safely and within the guidance of the CDC and the World Health Organization, given the coronavirus crisis that's happening right now. So again, wearing a mask, maybe carrying hand sanitizer or bringing that, making sure that they know when they get home they're going to have to wash their hands thoroughly, and making sure that they understand, maybe at a protest they're going to see people hugging each other or putting their hands around each other, and really understanding kind of the safety risks in terms of spreading a virus that might come with that. And so I think that having those conversations with your child beforehand, gauging your child's ability to sort of follow your household rules, really, and the rules of the CDC are all important when considering whether this is safe for you to attend in terms of getting sick or getting someone else sick. So I think that's a really great question, and I think that a lot of parents are struggling with these decisions, how much to protest or go out today, and how they can best engage in those issues with their children as well. So thank you for asking me about that. On a similar note, we got a question that from a parent who asks, how can I talk to my grade school son about fairness? We are white. It breaks my heart to say that his Black classmates are treated differently, but now I feel like I have to. Yes, I think that you do have to. I think that it is very important now more than ever, especially with your white son or white children, to have a conversation. It is unfortunate, and there is a longstanding history that has led up to the inequality and unfairness that is going on in our question. It is understandable that it breaks your heart to have to even have these conversations. However, the only way to stop these things from happening in the future, to raise children that have an understanding and a perspective on these issues that can help them not be racist or act in racist ways, is to have the conversation with them directly. So as difficult as it is, there are a couple things to sort of keep in mind when you're having these conversations with your children. First, I think the most important part is just don't avoid talking about it. It's very likely and possible, of course, that your child is seeing the news, is reading things on social media, reading things on the internet, all of that kind of thing. And it is necessary that you have a conversation with them about these issues. It's important when you do have those conversations, I should say, because it's not going to be just one, that first you gauge, what do they know about what's going on? I think that what you wrote about talking about fairness and that you have to explain to him that his Black classmates might be treated differently, this might be something he already knows. And so really gauging with your child what they know about what's going on right now is going to be a really important way of starting these conversations. Part of the reason you do that is because then you also have an opportunity to sort of correct misinformation and teach them values and things that you're already trying to teach them in your family, but really having an explicit conversation about them, about your child with these issues. Especially if your child is white, it's very likely, very obvious that you haven't ever had to have these conversations before. For families that are Black or other people of color that have to have these conversations all of the time, they don't really get to escape these conversations. And so children around the world have these conversations starting at a very, very young age. And we know that it's not going to traumatize your child having these conversations with them. The conversations you have with your son being white are going to be very different than the conversations that families of color and Black families are having with their children. However, it is just as important that you have these conversations with your child. So the first rule of thumb is just really don't avoid these conversations with your child. Next, as I think was mentioned in the question, that it really breaks your heart to even have to have these conversations. And it can be a very difficult conversation or conversations to have. And racism itself can be very difficult to discuss. Issues of race, talking about the color of people's skin, that we are white and his friends are Black. Those things should be explicitly said. That said, you do need to make sure that as a parent and a caregiver, you're able to have these conversations. We've talked a lot about in the past when you have to have difficult conversations with your child to make sure that you're calm and centered. It's okay to share with your child how you're feeling about a situation. It would be very understandable that this situation breaks your heart or makes you very sad, makes you angry, makes you upset, that watching these videos of white police killing Black men is very sad and very scary and very infuriating. And it's okay to be honest about your feelings. However, when you do have these conversations with your child, you want to make sure that you are able to control your feelings, really, so that you can model, appropriate coping, but also so that you have the opportunity to listen, that you're not really distracted by your own reaction going into these conversations, and you're able to take in and model for them how people can have calm conversations about racism, about social justice, about equality, and about the color of people's skin and the history of our country. So making sure that you are able and kind of in a space to be able to have those conversations is important. I think also it's important to really encourage them to ask you questions. This kind of goes back to not avoiding talking about it, because you want to make sure that they're getting the right information and that they're getting information that is accurate. You want to be able to correct anything that they don't understand. And you want to make it really a safe space for them to come and talk to you about these things in the future, which is really the last kind of idea, is to have the conversations. Don't just have one conversation. Make this a topic that you talk about regularly in your home. As I think I've already mentioned, there is a lot to be covered on this topic. And I think that depending on where your family lives and your family's history, there's a lot to talk about, probably within a very micro level. It could be in your home. It could be talking about conversations that your children have been privy to in front of extended family that maybe said things that were racist or were highly inappropriate and not just. And it's okay to point that out, or to have a conversation with your child about those things. So that's just one of many conversations you can be having with your child. It's also okay to have conversations about the videos, about the news, about things they're seeing in school. You want to keep the door open, because you also want to be able to provide actionable things that if your child experiences something as a white child, if they experience their Black peer getting treated differently than they are, you want to be able to give them action steps. And one of those action steps will be coming to you and telling you what they saw, going to their teacher. And so increasing their comfort in having these conversations, really direct conversations about race and racism and the way people are treated because of the color of their skin in the history of our country, is important. And it's important that they feel comfortable or have an increased agency in starting and having these conversations with people. And most especially you're their parent and their caregiver. And so they're going to come home and bring these sort of confusing topics to you. When they are confused, or when they do need more information, when they are asking you questions, it's also very okay to say that you don't know the answer to their question. This is a really good opportunity to learn with them. There are a lot of excellent resources out already. There is a lot of amazing anti-racism work that has been going on for centuries, decades. There's a lot of excellent literature out there, and there's also more literature and resources coming out. I myself have seen, I think, an uptick in the amount of literature and resources that are shared, and we certainly have shared some of those resources online at childmind.org as well. And so it's also okay to say, I don't know the answer to that question, and look it up. Try to find what you would consider as a good resource. It's a nice way to show them how to find a good resource, how to investigate, how to understand the opinion and the perspective of where you're getting that information. For example, if you want to get information for them, if they ask you a question about how it feels to be Black and you don't know the answer to that question, it's very important then that you direct them to where they can get information from that, from a Black perspective, and letting them understand how we're vetting our resources, how are we getting information, how are we looking at a lot of different perspectives from people of all different backgrounds that may be different from ours. So using these opportunities when you maybe don't know the answer to something to actually help them engage in those kind of problem solving skills, critical thinking, and teaching them how to take the next step is going to be really, really important. This lets them know that this is a conversation that you are willing to have time and time again. Then you're not shutting down their thoughts and feelings quickly, but really you're engaging them. Similarly to engaging them in civic protest, if that's the route that you choose, you're also then engaging them in how to search for information well, how to think critically about these topics, and also to continue learning and continue educating themselves on a topic. It is, unfortunate in our country the number of times there have been incidents of Black people getting killed because of the color of their skin. And this is not the first time we've had these conversations. And especially if we want it to end, this is not going to be the last time we have these conversations. So it's very important that you leave the door open for your child. All of this, I think it's important to comment that it does depend on the developmental level of your child. So younger kids are going to talk about this very differently than older kids. Teenagers may have different experiences and exposures to things on social media. And what's really incredible is that there is already a lot of really good work out there, like books and toys and things that are available to talk about these issues, as well as to just simply continue exposing your young children to people of different colors, and to people of colors, buying them toys that are Black dolls and where books have a majority of Black characters in them that are accurately portraying Black families and people of color, I think is really, really important. And what's incredible is that a lot of these resources have been recently brought to light, even for adults. I think the New York Times bestseller list has a lot of awesome books on anti-racism and how white people can continue doing the work that needs to be done. And these resources also exist for children, especially of different developmental ages. So I just want to really encourage all parents and caregivers out there to definitely engage in these conversations with your children. Engage in them and engage in them intentionally. There is no need to shy away from saying the words race and racism. If you're talking about Black people, say Black individuals. If you're talking about being white, you can really label that honestly. And that's going to just promote honesty, transparency in your conversations with your children. So I think that these are really great questions. These are definitely questions that are on everybody's mind these days. And I really thank you all for tuning in with me today to go over these topics and discuss them further. So I hope that it was helpful. And remember, we're here every day. We look through your questions daily. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. Please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more about the incredible variety of remote telehealth resources we have available during this time for children, teens, and young adults. Be safe, and thank you.